Welcome into TWMP Daily. I'm Scott Faughn with a really cool show today. We are joined by, can we call you super lawyer Chuck Hatfield?
Call me whatever you want, Scott.
One of the most prominent public affairs lawyers in the state, Chuck Hatfield. Thank you so much for the time.
Happy to be here.
So you're the one that ends up dealing with all these things. Do you vote Republican? Because if I were you, as a person with no morals or principles, and the Republicans just generated business for me every May, I'd vote Republican every November.
Well, yeah, I've thought about maybe I ought to start sending some money to some of these guys.
It is an investment in business development, I think.
If you're a government lawyer, you do well with an overly complicated and aggressive regulatory system because it keeps you busy. So more complicated, the more out there it is, the better it is for business. You know, my good friend Harvey Teitelbaum told me when I came in private practice, a lawyer's never going to go broke in a government town. He's been right about that.
Oh, that's a good line. I like that. Well, here's my thing. I watch the supermajority, and I watch it. It's, there's some struggles. And I think part of it is, though, you had a lot of folks in town, right, for a veto session. If you had to drag your ass all around Hell's Half Acre to get elected, right, and you ask for money for everybody you've ever met in your life and all this, and you work hard, it is very hard to win a legislative seat. People, I think, especially the media, they overlook the fact that it's very, very hard. You get up here and you're like, I want to cut taxes. And they'll be like, oh, sorry, Kyle, we cut taxes like 6 times in 5 years. I mean, we're kind of, I'm going to get rid of abortion. Oh, Kyle, we did that and it kind of didn't work out. The public, well, I'm going to give every 2-year-old a bazooka. Well, Kyle, we've already given 2-year-olds bazookas. It would be disappointing. And I think so you start doing kind of squirrelier and squirrelier things because you want to matter. You want to make an impact. And the problem is, I remember I got to watch the last year when I was helping Mark Richardson a little bit, of the Democrats in charge. You had a Senate caucus with Danny Staples and Lacey Clay. It was not an ideologically aligned supermajority. This supermajority is ideologically aligned, and they've kind of checked all the boxes they can, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I think government is not designed to do things quickly and efficiently.
Yes.
And that's a good thing because as the people, right, you don't want your government moving too fast and doing things that maybe aren't right because it happens in the heat of the moment. Yeah. So it's hard. And, there are a lot of people out there who think that the way to get it moving is to be a disruptor or to, they say, move the Overton window, right? You have to post up on the extreme edges in order to get the middle debate moved to your position. And I mean, I can't say that's an incorrect political philosophy, but I mean, I think, as I said, government is not designed to move too quickly, and that's good. I think that's what the founding fathers wanted is you got to be deliberative. It's going to be hard to make drastic changes. It should be hard. Yeah, it should be hard.
That's why I've always believed the most important institution this state has, and you've served in several institutions in this state, is its Missouri State Senate.
Yeah.
I think that the Missouri Senate being able to say no is the greatest institution we have. And it's why I hate it when it gets diluted, and it's getting diluted, and it'll get diluted again Friday. And every PQ is a dilution of that. And I always tell people, whatever government you hate the most, the fact that you or your children won't live under it is thanks to the Missouri Senate.
Yeah.
Well, and my only concern is what's left of it.
Well, so as you may know, I actually worked in the Senate when Jay Nixon was a state senator. People don't talk about his service as a state senator too much.
His former colleagues did a lot.
Well, he used to say that he felt like his job in the Senate was to be a linebacker. He didn't want to play offense. He didn't care about accomplishing anything. His job was to stop things. And so he played linebacker. He played defense on the floor of the Senate to keep people from doing things that they shouldn't be doing.
A lot of his colleagues, I don't think, were the biggest fans of his. And
Right.
And again, we're talking about Jay Nixon, the Babe Ruth of Missouri politics. The man, more people have walked into a booth and checked the name Jeremiah W. J. Nixon than any Missouri in the history of the state. That legacy speaks for itself. I mean, you could debate it or whatever, but I do think it's almost a different talent to be as popular as he was in this state and be in the Senate.
Well, so the reason he was not liked by the old guard, the Danny Staples,
Well, he beat their guy first,
the Jimmy
right?
Mathewsons, he beat their guy, Sheriff Berger, I think it was. But, he was seen as a grandstander. Most dangerous place to be in Jefferson City is between Jay Nixon and the camera. But, the stuff that he did that was considered grandstanding, upstaging the senior guys. I mean, it's nothing compared to what goes on today. I mean,
and it was popular.
It was popular. He figured out some hot button issues, that he wanted to go out there on and get press on, and sometimes that embarrassed other people. And that's the way it is now.
Speaking of issues where there's a little grandstanding, the new maps.
Yeah.
Now, I watched some of the House debate, which is more than I usually watch of a House debate. I don't understand why the Republicans why create this lie. I watched Governor Kehoe essentially shoot that hostage video, acting like he wanted to do this. When it turned to IP reform, you could tell he's in. That his eyes lit up. But this was Donald Trump told him to do this. Donald Trump sent them the map. Donald Trump said, "Don't change my map," and they're going to do all of the things he said. Donald Trump is wildly popular. Just as Jay Nixon, his record's unimpeachable. In this state, they love Donald Trump on the level with FDR and Lincoln. In 64, they didn't let the Democrats vote when Lincoln won re-election. He is a beloved figure in the state. He has a special relationship with the people in the state that Jay Nixon did. Your working guys in Eastern Jack and South County and Jeffco, your farmers in the Boot Heel, that's where Trump I don't know why you don't just say, yeah, Trump told us to do this. We support Trump. We're doing it. What's the why? Why come up with all the BS?
Well, I think I've heard a lot of them say that's what we're doing. We're just going to do whatever Trump tells us to do. I think that
I think a lot of their constituents, that's what they want them to do.
Somewhere deep in their soul, they like to think they have their own agency, right? I make my own decisions, and it hurts to admit that you ran for this office, as you say, you did all this work, you went out there, you campaigned real hard, but you're just going to give up your vote. You're just going to give up your own ability and just do whatever somebody tells you to do.
But isn't it worse to be doing that and then try to delude yourself into the fact you're not?
I think so. And I mean, this isn't quite what you're asking, but I think the other thing that, I hope plays into this a little bit with folks that have been in the game for a long time is what we're really talking about doing is taking Emanuel Cleaver out of Congress.
100%.
And, you can disagree with him. You can vote against him.
How do you not respect him?
Reverend Cleaver is a great man.
Yep.
He's done a lot for Missouri. Mm-hmm. I think he gets up every day and tries to do what's right. And, I don't think Donald Trump cares about that at all. I think he just wants another seat. And there's one I can get in Kansas City,
But
Missouri.
if you're from New York and you don't care the figure
right.
that Emanuel Cleaver has in Kansas City and built in this state, and why would you? I understand why Trump's doing what he's doing. I almost think if this was them redistricting Cori Bush out, people would have been like, yeah, okay, I'm good with that. I mean, we're kind of saving ourselves some embarrassment here.
Yeah.
But there's none of that with Emanuel Cleaver.
None of it.
This is the most amazing thing. The text messages I get from the tweets, I've never seen a thing more starkly different than the messaging that people do publicly and what they say privately. There is no rural Republican excited about this.
Yeah.
Not one.
I mean, Emanuel Cleaver never set out to hurt anybody one day in his life. He's just a good guy out there doing it. And, the other thing, so I think folks need to come up with these justifications. They need to figure out a way to sleep at night.
You think Trump would? I think Trump would say, yeah, I slept with the porn star and it was great. And so
not Trump, but I mean the people in Missouri who are trying to come up with all these various justifications.
I think they'd be better off just admitting it.
Because I got to tell you, the other thing is I don't sit in a lot of Republican strategy meetings, but
you should.
Why you're creating at all competitive districts. Look at Roy Blunt, right? When he was in Congress. What was Roy Blunt's strength? Roy Blunt's strength was a completely safe district where he could sit down there and raise tens of millions of dollars and become probably the most powerful person in Congress.
Yeah.
Jason Smith's going to do the same thing. It's just a matter of time. But why create competitive districts? Why not leave yourself with 6 really safe districts where your Missouri Congress people can be safe, raise their money, develop their base?
All right, give me your opinion. If you're Mike Kehoe, you get this phone call, probably from some lower level person, then ultimately the president calls you. If Chuck Hatfield's governor of Missouri and Barack Obama called him, I mean, I think you go, I don't want to do this. Yes, Mr. President, and you hang the phone and go, shit, I don't want to do this. I understand why the governor's doing what he's doing. Do you know a politician that would tell a very popular president no in this situation?
No, of course not.
I don't either.
But, I don't know what I think a really good governor would figure out some way.
I think he's wiggled and wiggled. It just ran out of runway.
To wiggle. There's a famous story, right, that Franklin Roosevelt met with a bunch of bankers or something, and they wanted him to do something, and he said, all right, you've convinced me, now go out there and bring pressure on me. I think if you're in that situation, one thing you do is you say, well, yes, of course, Mr. President, we'll get right on that. And then you start talking to your people about, is there some way to derail this where I can still say I support it? I was shocked at the vote in the House. I thought they were going to roll that through with every single Republican vote and have enough, and be arguing about an emergency clause, because they would pick up maybe a Democrat or two. But that vote tells you, there are people out there who are willing to say, no, this isn't the right thing to do. Dave Griffith, our representative right here in Jefferson City, voted no on
a lot of them just didn't show up.
A lot of them just didn't show up. So, I mean, there was, there was an opportunity, and maybe still is, but.
Senator Nicola sat in that chair yesterday, excuse me, and he told me, Kelton, he indicated he will be filibustering both bills. Now, if he is, something tells me Senator Moon might be.
Sure.
Now, it's becoming very normal, as sad as it is to say, to PQ in the Missouri Senate. I've never seen a Republican get PQ'd.
Right.
Ever.
Well, so maybe getting into my space, right? I mean, when I admire a lot of the things Mike Moon talks about in terms of how the government's supposed to work.
And he's genuine. He's sincere.
He is. And I have said he's one of the nicest guys I've ever met. I've said to many people that when you sit down and you talk to Mike Moon, he is not wrong about how the government is supposed to work. Mm-hmm. He's wrong about how it does work. But he is not wrong about how it should work.
I agree with that.
And he has a lot of good thoughts on that. And so, you think about what the Constitution says about redistricting, you think about what Missouri's done on redistricting, all redistricting, it used to be like the cicadas. It showed up, it was really noisy, everybody hated it.
Miserable.
Sometimes couldn't sleep at night because we're arguing about redistricting, and you get through it and it goes to ground and you don't worry about it again for 10 years.
Yeah.
And then you come back and you fight it all out again, and it just keeps coming up. I mean, I don't think the Constitution and the folks that set up our system envisioned that we'd be having redistricting fights every couple of years. It's extremely disruptive.
Sure.
And if we can do it now, 25, why not redo it every 2 years?
And I know I did see the Democrats. You can go to the Blue Book. They did not do this. When they had the ability to do this, they didn't. Frankly, you go back to your Peter Kinder, Catherine Hanaway days, they didn't do this.
Right.
Your Ron Richard days, they did not do this. This is extraordinary, and everybody thinks their times are extraordinary. Like, there's terrible crime in the cities, we have to do this. Well, in my lifetime, there's been terrible crime in the cities like most of the time. It's just a simple partisan, and to me, the fact that it was a Washington thing, not a Missouri thing, you raise your eyebrows. But you're losing a really great man. And when we interviewed Congressman Cleaver on this show, he wouldn't say a bad word about Mike Kehoe.
No.
Which is probably par for the course here. I am a very unabashed admirer of Mike Kehoe, and I understand the spot he's in, but I still don't think it's the right thing to do. Yeah,
and so when we're talking about, everybody kind of standing up and saluting what the president wants, the other factor that we haven't really talked about is your congressional district, your congressional delegation. When you said Democrats didn't do it, one reason, again, is it's noisy, it's rough, it's tough, and people don't want to do it unless they have to. Congressional redistricting historically has been a fight among incumbent congressmen. And it sounds like all of the incumbent Congress people, Republicans, just said, yeah, that's fine, redraw my district.
I think that Onder wants a St. Charles district, which is better. I get that. The people that win are St. Charles. The people that win are the people the entire state conspired to screw 3 years ago.
Right.
They're the big winners here. Burleson, of course, but I don't hear Ann Wagner. I don't hear Alford, and I sure as hell don't hear Sam Graves piping up saying this is the greatest thing, we got to do this.
Well, that's the thing. When historically, and I lived through some Democrat redistricting.
Well, the worst one was when y'all kicked Carnahan out.
Right. It was brutal.
There was no chairs, right?
It was brutal. And so historically, nobody wants to deal with it because it's going to be a huge fight. But here you had, Wagner and Alford and Graves apparently sign off on this. which is why I think Kehoe is saying, well, I guess we'll do it then.
I remember people thought it was the Republicans getting rid of Russ Carnahan, and there's some truth to that. There's also some truth to the fact that Clay and Cleaver were like, well, better you than us. Sorry,
well,
man.
It goes back to what I said. Clay and Cleaver, to a lesser extent, wanted a safe district where you don't have to worry about it. Now, that was before Democrat primaries, in Congress got to be such a huge thing. But he wanted a safe district. He didn't have to worry about running. He didn't have to worry about taking care of the district, really. He could go raise his money and build his power. It's what I was saying about Blunt. I mean, you want a safe district, and then you can go to Washington and sort of do your thing.
And with Emmanuel Cleaver and Roy Blunt, while they did have safe districts and they did spend their time building clout, Missouri benefited.
Absolutely.
And benefited from that game. They played that, and this state is so much better off for both of those men doing what they did.
They name bridges after guys like that.
Yeah. All right. Now, you and I have had conversations about all sorts of laws and all sorts of chairs in this town from all different directions. If I ask you something that's like strategy, I only ask it out of ignorance.
All right.
When you approach something like this redistricting map, what are the obvious arguments that anybody would make in a court that argues against what I think is very likely to be the new map come the weekend?
You mean the specific arguments on this? Well, the first thing you do is you Mike Moon it. You go to the language of the Constitution and you see if there's anything in there that's going to be useful to you. In your arguments, or that maybe might hurt you in your arguments. So, the Constitution in Article 3, I think it's Section 45, begins with the word when. It says when the census data is transferred to the governor, I'm paraphrasing here, then the General Assembly shall redraw the congressional districts. So when you get that census data, you go do redistricting. They did that. And they're not supposed to do it again until when they get census data. So that's kind of the first issue is they don't have new census data, and the Constitution says you do it when you get new census data.
Which is the logic behind redistricting to start with is population shifts.
Absolutely.
You want to equally represent everybody, yeah.
So if we redistrict right now, today, which we're doing as we sit here, it is a fact that Jackson County doesn't have the same population it did in the 2020 census. Greene County, St. Charles County.
And that might be the squirreliest census ever because it was taken in a pandemic.
There's a lot of people, I heard Catherine Hanaway say she's not sure that census was right. So, you know that if you redistrict today, your districts are not going to be uniform. In other words, there are going to be more people in some than others. And you're screwing over some folks because their districts are going to be too big, and they should have more, their votes should value more. I mean, I think you're screwing over St. Charles a little bit. I understand that what Onder wants to do, but St. Charles is a growing district. And, you're going to draw it based on data that shows St. Charles smaller than it currently is. Greene County, same way.
On the politics of it, who's a good candidate for there?
For
the 5th. That's essentially Highway 50, right? It's basically you leave the Kansas state line, you jump down on 50, and you go Warrensburg, Sedalia here.
So I don't know my Republican candidates.
Oh, you'd be a Democrat though.
But I think it remains to be seen what Cleaver would do. In a world where Congressman Cleaver sits back, when I interviewed him, I was like, so then you bring in Hatfield? He goes, yeah, Chuck's good. We're going to have him do that. So let's say he gives you 5-6 months to litigate this. Right.
And he doesn't run in the new 5th. He decides that's not what he wants to do.
Right.
Who would be the candidate?
Well, I mean, Democrats now have to look to local officials. I mean, there is some power in local officials.
There's just not many of them in there.
Yeah, Jackson County, Frank White's got all kinds of problems.
I've become a Frank White fan.
Yeah.
What a great man to look back on his life and maybe be part of something like a real injustice, like the 10/26 terror attacks, and decide he wants to right that wrong by kicking the Royals out of the state of Missouri. And I support Frank White. Mr. White, you have all my respect. Props to you. What about a Jason Kander?
Oh, well, Jason Kender's always, in the mix if he wants to.
I mean, there's no secret that he doesn't always get along the best with his fellow Democrats. But I think they might be so pissed off about the situation that people put that aside and put their shoulder behind him for this seat.
Yeah.
This will be this is a Jason Kander type thing. Big national attention, be a sexy issue. He's running to right this wrong, and Kander can get votes. He's a vote getter.
I wouldn't sleep on Quentin Lucas ever.
Great candidate.
I'm a big fan of Jolie Justice, who is still who is kind of out of the game right now.
Used to have a home in Callaway County.
Used to have a home in Callaway County, and a lot of people have underestimated Jolie over the years.
Yep.
I don't know whether she'd be interested or not. I haven't heard of anybody who's interested because everybody venerates Cleaver. Yeah. So.
But on the next political question, that new fifth, it looks like it's drawn mildly competitive. I mean, you'd have to have a good Democrat year and a good Democrat candidate to make that competitive. But if that's not insane to think. I mean, how many people have been waiting for Congressman Cleaver to retire or running cancer?
Right.
So you got a whole group of people that are ready to go. It's that district's relying on independents to stay Republican.
Right.
And I have a theory about independents. They were Democrats, and I don't think they became Republicans. I think they became voters of President Trump's. I mean, you got Callahan, DePasco, Rizzo, Lavoda had that in the middle there. I see them vote for Nicola by a small margin over a good candidate, Robbie Sauls. But I don't know that when Trump's not on your TV every night saying just white trash things that people like in the boot heel and independents. Right. As Victor Callahan would say, he was a pro-life, pro-gun, white trash independence politician. I don't know that when Trump's gone, those folks stay Republicans or even show up at all to vote.
Well, I think that's right.
I mean, the linchpin of this plan is all the rural areas offset, Kansas City, and then you take independence as like the cherry on top that makes it Republican. Right. That cherry is recent. It's not. I don't know. I don't think it's going to be very interesting to see what those voters do because I know what they did before Trump. Right. Will they go back to doing that after, or will it dissipate? Then that district was very competitive.
So, I don't know. I've lived through Democrat majorities, Republican majorities. So you want politics according to Hatfield?
Yes.
The people who come out against the man are going to win. The people who come out against the institution are going to win. So you look at Eric Greitens, right? Why did Eric Greitens win? He wanted to drain the swamp. Now the swamp's grown back a little bit since we had Eric Greitens, but that's what he was all about. You go back historically, you look at Joe Teasdale, who came in and said, I'm going to take on the utilities. Now, having Jimmy Carter win certainly didn't hurt anything. But you look at Jason Kander, who sort of came in with that, I'm going to be anti-establishment. Mm-hmm. I'm going to be against, I guess it was Blunt. I don't know how this is going to play at home, but my father-in-law was a high school graduate, excavation man and farmer in northern Missouri. When I met him, he was all in for Jesse Jackson and the Rainbow Coalition, right? Wayne Kreitz.
Oh yeah.
And the Rainbow Coalition of the banks are putting the farmers out of business. It's the old populist cross of gold kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. By the end of his life, he was all in for Ron Paul and then Donald Trump. Why? Because those people are against the establishment.
Did he hit a Ross Perot blip in there somewhere?
He did. He did hit a Ross Perot blip, right? But people think that Democrats and Republicans both are working together to support big institutions and to screw over the common man.
There's truth in that.
And they're not wrong about that. And if you can tap into that, Bobby Kennedy, right? Yeah. If you go back and read the Populist Manifesto that was Bobby Kennedy's guys, Ronald Reagan, right? That's a really good point. So, I think some of these partisan shifts are really temporary. I mean, there are folks out there who are now Trump voters who could just as easily go over and vote for Bernie Sanders
that anti-establishment message, I think, is hard for Manuel Cleaver to deliver.
Oh yeah.
I can't hear it in my mind from Quentin, although I think Quentin could probably deliver any message. I mean, he's that good. I think Jason Kander has delivered that message very successfusly. Right. I just, in my gut, the person that would make that the best race that I could think of, I think Kander could slip into that role. And it would be very hard for the Republican not to be the established, as they did rig the whole game for them.
Well, I mean, it's a matter of finding the message. Look, Josh Hawley right? An Ivy League guy
Yeah.
who is tapping into that populist message occasionally. You'll see it all the time, right? He's against the big
If we could only
social
shake that
media.
one picture of him buying wine at 2 PM in that V-neck shirt. I don't know. Forget how that came to be.
Well, so here you've got somebody who grew up, and surely he wouldn't argue with me on this, a pretty privileged life.
Yeah.
You know, an insider's insider, but he seized on a certain message that has populist undertones to it, and so you know, it's a matter of what policy are you going to describe. So, I don't think there are. You know, Congressman Clay famously said, "No permanent." What was it? No permanent friends, only permanent interests.
I give that book out. I probably have 30 of that book. It's my favorite book on politics.
Yeah.
Anybody that comes in, I give it to him because he talks about how the unions were the most racist institutions there were. Now it's their best ally, but he goes,
Right.
they're not our friends.
Well, and so back to
They're not our enemies.
back to your average, you know, blue collar voter in independence, right? I mean, I don't think they have permanent friends in the Republican or the Democrat Party. They have permanent interests. That's generally keeping the government off their back and not getting screwed over by a bunch of forces that are way more powerful than they are.
Let's talk about, give me a prediction. And I assume you predict, like most, this map will be the map that gets passed.
Yeah.
Is a fight you can win in court?
I think so. There's several problems
Is it a
on the
state
map.
or a federal, or is it both?
Well, it's a little bit of both. So the first issue is, can you do it at all? That's what we were just talking about. Does the Constitution allow redistricting when we don't have new census data? And I think there's a very strong argument that you're not supposed to redistrict until you get new census data. And then the next issue is, what about this map? And that is a combination of state and federal. You know, the Missouri Constitution says the map is supposed to be compact. And so look at that 5th district. And generally, compactness, we think of a square or a circle. But
Has
they
that
went over
argument
there.
carried the day recently?
Well, no, it hasn't.
Yeah.
But in Pearson versus Koster, which was the lawsuit in 2010, or after the 2010 redistricting, I think I've got my years right. Yeah, after the 2010 redistricting, you know, the Supreme Court sort of laid out that compactness is still important, and they upheld the 5th district. They challenged several, but the 5th then was more compact than this one.
Is that the one that reached out to Ray County?
Yeah.
For the, yeah.
Exactly, but it had a kind of a weird dip
Yeah.
in it. But you know, this one has this weird jut. Cason Bayless wrote a piece about how it goes up Troost Avenue, cuts off.
I bet you the Washington people did not think of the significance of Troost. They probably have no idea.
Yeah,
And they just drew it because it made sense for the numbers. And with no one in Missouri saying, you know, Troost is a little bit of a important street in Missouri and in Kansas City, it just shows you that the Washington folks just don't give a damn.
yeah, I think that's right, and that's maybe the other issue. It's a federal issue, but you know, it's getting harder and harder to win racial discrimination claims in these congressional districts. But you know, doing something that looks pretty intentional there, drawing that line up Troost. I'm not going to bring that lawsuit, but might give some folks.
Well, what would it have mattered if they traded some Democrats there for some other white Democrat? I mean,
Well, what would it exactly?
it accomplishes your goal just the same, right?
It does, and the fact that you draw a line that clearly draws, you know, clearly
Divides,
runs down that black-white line, you know, might give some people pause. I'm not sure. I don't know enough about my federal racial challenges to really tell you there. But that's why we're not messing with the 1st, right? Because you try to divide up the 1st, and you could draw what the law calls a minority majority district over there. There's enough black people over there that they ought to be able to elect their own congressman. You start trying to divide that up, and you could be in trouble federally. That's why they're not touching the 1st. The 5th, you don't have enough black vote over there.
And never have, right?
And never have. Yeah.
All right, end of the day, can the Democrats win that seat?
Oh yeah, the 5th.
Got to be the right Democrat, though.
Got to be the right Democrat. Got to be the right year.
I don't think they can win it with Donald Trump on TV every night.
Probably not.
I think with Donald Trump's off TV, I think the whole state's going to be very interested to see what the voters of independence think of the Republican Party minus Donald Trump.
Well, and you know, when you ask me a question like that, I think of the long term.
Yeah.
I mean, I was talking to somebody the other day about you know, shifts in demographics. You know, when I was coming up in the 80s and early 90s, Republicans dominated St. Louis County. You know,
Yeah, that's right.
John Ashcroft.
Betty Sims.
Right, and
Yeah.
and John Ashcroft won St. Louis County. That's how.
Really?
That when you ran for governor, that was the big problem. Is he was dominating the hell out of St. Louis County. Today, right?
How far north did that dominance go? Did it make Bridgeton? Did it?
Yeah, you know, I don't recall that I know that.
Because Wayne Good was the senator from
yeah.
Florissant, right? It didn't go in the North County, I think, but it had all South. It only had all West County.
Yeah.
I guess it had some South County too.
Yeah, definitely South County, West County. But you know, it was considered a Republican county as a county,
Yeah.
and now it's not, of course. You know, St. Charles hasn't always been so solidly Democrat. Or Republican, I mean. It has been for a long time. Jefferson County.
Ted House, yeah.
Jefferson County used to be a Democrat county. Everybody,
Absolutely.
Joanne Carl and, you know, every state rep.
Well, the
down there was a
McKennas,
Democrat.
yeah.
The McKennas. So,
Let's talk about IP reform.
sure.
Before we do that, though, we got to talk about our sponsors. Want to thank folks. You know, you bring clients in, you got to put them at the courtyard, right? I mean, you know, they're going to think you're not really serious about their business if you don't put them up there. They're always the best rural broadband in Missouri, but United Fiber up in the great Northwest, as Senator Hageman would say. And then grown, manufactured, and tested here in Missouri, 100% plant-based medicine here. Mocan Trade and their members sell to everyone every day. And look at this. Look at this cool thing. Buddy Kyle gave me this new Stein.
Yeah.
I think it's got Eat, Drink, and Be Merry when I did the thing on here. But thank Kyle for the Stein. We will display this along with the other. We're about 600 now in the back room. And check this out. This is something by you. It's a Teamsters Allied Division, the Brotherhood of Maintenance of Way employees. Check that out. I got the pin that I'll be wearing on the show Sunday. Sunday we'll have Andrew Bailey on. His last interview, only one I noticed that he did before he went to run the FBI or kind of run the FBI or something. His interview will be Sunday on This Week in Missouri Politics. Let's talk about IP reform.
You know, I got to tell you, you got to get somebody from the Marriott in here to tidy up a little bit. It's getting a little.
It would be much cleaner if someone. I'm afraid they might quit. Then they'd go on strike, and there we'd be. You know, Randolph wouldn't appreciate that. I don't think.
But you want to talk about IP decimation?
So, number one, I'm sure they can pass this, but there isn't. This will be the interesting thing Friday. This is what's going to take a while because the realtors are not for this,
Right.
and the trial lawyers are not for this, and the trial lawyers have a good amount of clout in the Missouri State Senate. The unions, not for this.
Singfeld people generally not for this.
I noticed the speaker voted no. I would be willing to bet Senator Coleman might lean to vote no. Nicola said I said, what do you think of it? He said, not much. And I don't think Senator Moon thinks much of it. That's going to be interesting. One, can you get this passed? And two, the system they've set up. I guess, in my opinion, it should be a little harder to amend the Constitution. Maybe it should be a little easier to pass a statute, brother folks, but a little harder. This probably makes it close to impossible, right?
Oh yeah, yeah. Rudy Keller's done an analysis, I think, of, you know, what would have passed. So
What would have passed?
a very, very small number. So you look back on.
But they would have ran their campaigns a little different if this was the rules.
Probably.
But still, it's tough.
But let's look back. So if you got to have, what are they proposing now? 8 out of 8 congressional districts. So let's look back on some conservative things that would not have passed. I don't think Second Amendment Protection Act passed.
No.
You know, you know, I'm not sure Hancock. I haven't gone back and done the analysis on Hancock, but I don't think Hancock passes if you got to do 8 out of 8. The realtors did the proposal to limit taxes on real estate transfers. I don't think that passes. Maybe you get Barklage running it, and he might figure that out. But
Well, if you got Barklage and Cardetti, you'd have you a team there, I think.
yeah, that was a pretty popular deal. But you know, so everybody's kind of focused on some of the Democrat, if you will, proposals. Sure. I mean, Medicaid clearly, Medicaid expansion doesn't pass. Marijuana doesn't pass.
Well, what they're really thinking is Amendment 3.
Sports betting doesn't pass. Amendment 3.
But I mean, it's about this. Most everything across the street's about abortion,
Right.
and I think that's what they're thinking of. Let me ask you this: you deal with this more than anybody I know on an in-depth level. What if you made it a little tougher? What if you had to have signatures in 8 of the 8? That takes your buy-in from about 1.1 million now to probably 1.4 million, 1.5 million. And why shouldn't folks in Southeast Missouri get a chance to sign these petitions? I asked Ashley that. She really didn't have an answer.
Yeah. So you know,
That's a reasonable thing that makes it a little harder.
Yeah.
But not impossible.
there are, there are a lot of people in this debate. If I were the one making all the decisions, I would say that's fine. Let's make it a little harder, and we can talk about that more if you like. But what I'd also want is I don't want the legislature undoing what we just did.
So do you give 5-year moratorium, something like that?
So Nebraska has a thing where you can't put it back on the ballot for another 4 years. Then, of course, you're going to get in arguments about is it the exact
Can you
same
not change
thing?
it in the legislature for 4 years either?
Well, that's what you would do if the people passed it. You gotta let it sit there for a little while. Now, I would not say you can't ever change it. I mean, life changes, things happen, so you need the flexibility to make the changes. But I think the way we're doing it right now, or what's being proposed right now, I mean, it's just going to take away any ability.
And I don't think that's right. I don't. To me, Jim Murphy, who I love to visit with, he had an idea. He said, we're not giving the people, we're taking something away. He thinks, I think it's very unlikely to actually pass the voters. I think all this is a big to-do about nothing, if you want the truth. But if you come to it and you say, we're going to make a statute that's 5 years if you pass it. We can't touch it for 5 years. We're going to make it a little easier to get signatures for a statute. Maybe something where an association or a group actually could accomplish this. That, to me, then you're giving the people something. Then you say it's going to take 55% to pass something.
Right.
Or you got to have 8 of 8 congressional districts. Because now they've ran one up into Arnold. Arnold people decide anything. If you're out at Hickory Log and Dexter and the government asks you to put your address on something, I would say hell no. Or I'd write John Lamping or something.
Right.
But, to me, there's no upside to just saying we're taking this away.
Yeah, so, we're back to where we started this conversation. People come to this town and they're upset that they can't make any progress, and so they go out there and they take these extreme positions. The initiative process is a way for people to say, hey, our legislature isn't getting it done, but the people support it. I mean, you look at the marijuana stuff, and I know there's a lot of criticism on that, but
folks wanted that.
Folks wanted that. Sports betting. Passed barely, but folks wanted that. Riverboat gaming.
Was that some of Cardetti's best work? That had funded opposition.
Right.
Now, they stopped 2 weeks before, but I've never seen something pass with funded opposition. And I think clearly, if Caesars would have ran that to the end, they would have beat it. But that, I think, might have been Jack's best work.
So I'm back on my populist theme, I know, but when you look around the country, the idea of initiative petitions, right, of the people to make their own decisions directly, it's a Midwest thing, and it happened during that whole agrarian cross of gold, William Jennings Bryan period. So if you go to the East Coast, they don't have initiative petitions.
Really?
As a general rule. You don't hear of it. California is the big leader on all this, but a lot of states, in Kansas, you can't, I got to remember how this goes. I don't think you can change the Constitution. It's either the Constitution or the statutes.
Have these things been bad for the Democratic Party in the state?
Have these initiatives?
You don't have to vote Democrat to get legalized marijuana. You don't have to vote Democrat to get Medicaid expansion. You don't have to vote Democrat now to get some very legal, I would say, liberal pro-choice laws compared to what they were. You can vote Republican because you want cops, and you want cops in your suburb keeping people away from you. And if you're in rural Missouri, you can keep your guns. And you can also kind of look around and go, I'm going to vote for this other stuff here on these initiative ballots.
Yeah, I don't know. I'd have to think about that. I mean, it appears to be a pretty good organizing tool for whoever runs them. So it does help you sort of identify.
It's where the juice in the Democratic Party has went to, is these initiative petitions.
Absolutely.
And a lot of the top talent in the Democrat Party has shifted to these initiative petitions.
Yeah, I think that's right. So the initiative, right? I mean, it goes back into our 1945. I think there was something even back in the earlier than that. But the current version goes back to our 1945 Constitution. Of course, the legislature hates it. Democrats didn't like initiative petitions either when they were in the legislature, because the whole point is people say we're tired of the gridlock, or we feel like some powerful interests have taken control and shut something down, won't allow it to pass. And so we're going to go do it ourselves. And of course, politicians don't like that.
Yeah, I feel that. This measure, I'm not qualified to analyze the legality of statutes, but this measure, ones I do talk to that are qualified have, even on the Republican side that want a CIP reform, they don't know that you could take something in your congressional district. I'm not sure which part of the Columbia spectrum you live on, but from southeast Missouri, we like to say no. We are not fans of voting yes on things.
Right.
It does create a situation where maybe my vote's more valuable than yours.
Yeah, so there's some federal case law on this that is not very well developed, but I think it's Mississippi, had a rule for years that to win the primary, you had to win in a certain number of counties, not just the statewide vote. And that was probably the white Democrats who wanted that rule.
That doesn't sound like a Republican.
And some of that got struck down. You got to win in a certain number of counties. It's a one person, one vote problem, which is what you're talking about there. So, if it passes, I don't think it will. I think if they put it on the ballot, I think it'll get voted down. The Cardettis and the Barklages of the world can speak more intelligently than I, but a no vote.
I bet you they're not speaking much right now.
Well, they may not be, but a no vote generally is easier.
Yes.
So,
I like to vote no.
Yeah.
I vote no almost everything. You really have to convince me to vote yes.
That's
I'm
right.
Just a no.
And I think there's people like you that do that. And then the second thing that happens, I've seen this in polling data, I sometimes will write sample summary statements for pollsters to test. And what I found is the longer the question, the higher your no vote.
Oh, because I don't read them.
Right.
I just vote no.
And people get about halfway through and they go, there's got to be something in here.
There's bullshit in here
There's
somewhere.
Bullshit in here somewhere.
I don't trust
so I'm
this.
going to vote no. And I think so. The no vote's always easier because you can at least confuse people.
I know you have major court cases to probably try today, so I want to be persuaded with your time. There's one thing I want to ask you though. Let's take IP reform. You don't sue on that until the voters would hypothetically pass it, right? Can you
That's
not?
right.
Is it illegal? Would the court not accept a lawsuit before it becomes law?
So there are two things you can do on a proposal that goes to the voters before they vote. Number one is the Constitution says you can't combine two different topics together.
Yeah, but the Supreme Court said that's cool.
Combining two topics?
8 or 10 topics.
Well, no, they haven't.
Oh, come on now. There is no way you take gerrymander, like the Queen Missouri stuff was the greatest example.
Well, it was.
Total different subjects combined together. Now, I don't know about legally, but by common sense, if we sitting on a fence post in DeKalb County looking at them windmills,
Right.
These are different things.
Clean Missouri 1 and 2 are the
Both
two
of them.
cases.
Both bullshit.
And I think they're what my friend Todd Graves calls voter candy, right? You throw something in there that doesn't belong.
The trans stuff on this abortion thing.
Yep.
Different stuff.
They're clearly different stuff.
But the court has said, cool, do that.
Okay. Well, there's at least one case, Missourians to Protect the Initiative, that says it isn't cool.
When was that
anyway,
case?
That was 84, 88.
Yeah, it's got a 19 in front of it.
You can sue over that. You might lose, but that's something
I think the court made it. I'll be honest with you. And I who the hell am I to question the legal prowess of Judge Russell? But from a good government standpoint, I think they made a mistake. I think one of the reasons we're here now with the whole initiative petition process under threat to go away, essentially,
right.
I do think they could have kept that a little tighter. Now, I don't know the law or any of that. I break more laws and have to come to you than I do read them. But I think by comments, it'd be better for this state if they tightened it a little bit.
Well, we're back to what I was saying. Senator Moon and I have had conversations about this. He's not wrong about how it should work. But as a practical matter, in the legislature, you got to be able to combine things together. I mean, there's nothing better than a good political subdivisions bill over there, right? So, the practical, gets in the way a little bit of good government.
Isn't the value of an initiative petition is you get to not have to go through the rigmarole of vote rolling and trading. You do one thing, it's one cause that folks can get behind. That is sort of the appeal of it, is it's not a 1,000-page bill with all these provisions. It's, hey, you want sports betting? Sweet.
Right. Yeah, so you can sue over the multiple subject. Again, you're right. It's very, very hard.
I think they should. I don't know how they could do this. I really do think that Judge Broniak, Judge Gooch, Judge Ransom, some of the newer members, I hope they think of the state overall. And I'm not saying totally get crazy. I'm not an extremist about much of anything except the designated hitter. But you could tighten it. And I think it'd be better for the state if they did.
Well, and they kind of have in the legislative front. There's a case called Byrd about homelessness, adding some provisions on homelessness, where the Supreme Court threw out a bill. So they're doing a little better. So the things you can sue over an IP are combines two topics, appropriates money. That's not really an issue most of the time. It was in Medicaid. And then, of course, you sue over what the ballot title looks like and what.
And you'll sue over that, I assume.
Well, we'll see what they do. But, you look at, you mentioned.
Why would you not?
You mentioned the new Amendment 3, right? The new Amendment 3 that the legislature proposed doesn't tell people they're repealing the old Amendment 3. And the case law is pretty clear.
You think they can win that?
Which side?
So here's the thing. I would assume you might represent the pro-choice side of that.
Yeah.
I have a lot of friends, and look, my mom is pro-life. I'm from a place where if you're not pro-life, they don't want to hear what you think about anything else.
Right.
There are a lot of good people that have good intentions on this issue, and there's some just grifter assholes for sure.
Right.
My gut tells me folks didn't know what they were voting for in Amendment 3, but they never do. It's these long things. I think there's some false optimism because at the end of the campaign, the pro-life guys closed pretty well. They narrowed a gap and had what I think folks thought 3-4 month out was going to be a larger margin was a smaller margin. But I think there's a little bit of false hope because they were asking for a no.
Well,
now they're asking for a yes with funded opposition. That is a tough headwind.
I'd always rather be on the no side.
Absolutely.
When it comes to these IP votes. So I think it is a tough headwind. I think putting IP reform on the ballot at the same time is a huge mistake.
Yeah.
I think it lets the left of center just run a straight up no campaign.
And to tie this back, you can go dust off some of William Jennings Bryan, cross a gold language, and you're against the man who's taking things from you.
Absolutely.
You're against the man.
Absolutely right. So, so those are the things. I don't know what they're going to do in terms of the ballot title on IP reform. I assume they're going to try to sell it hard. And that's what we do. We sue over that and say you're selling too hard.
Okay, so on a redistricting map, my gut tells me when this happens, I assume, there'll be some strategy and when Kehoe signs it. But I don't think that the current congressional district lives through the weekend till it gets to the governor's desk. What is the process like to sue on that? And is in the back of your mind, okay, I've got X weeks till filing, and Congressman Cleaver probably needs to know what he's going to do sometime in mid-February.
What is the process? Well, the process is
when they go to the bullpen and bring in Hatfield. I mean, what do you do?
Well, you sit down, you figure out what your arguments are. We've sort of talked about some of that. You figure out what plaintiffs you need, who your plaintiffs are, and then whoever it is that is wanting to sue.
Do you want Manuel Cleaver as your named plaintiff? I mean, that name carries a lot of weight in the state. Does it matter?
Oh, it doesn't really matter.
Okay.
At the end of the day. The courts want what they call standing, right? But, most of the abortion things have been fought by Dr. Anna Fitzjames. And I don't know that folks have ever met Anna Fitzjames. I have, Dr. Fitzjames, but her name's not, not particularly well known. She's just somebody who feels strongly and was willing to do it. So that's really all you need. There may be some things about, which congressional districts you want plaintiffs in that may affect it, but generally any citizen could bring that lawsuit.
So let's say you're an association in this state or a group of just people having dinner and you're pissed off about something. Mm-hmm. How does it go about, people text me sometimes wanting your number. How does someone go about contacting Chuck Hatfield and getting him to go to court on their behalf?
Well, I mean, usually they come through somebody, being in this town, there are a lot of different people that will send people my way. And, what I usually say is, let's do this in a couple of steps. Before you go file a lawsuit, let's see if you got a chance to win. Mm-hmm. So we sit down and we look at it.
There is a point where people just think a lawyer will file anything, and I think there's some truth to that. But when you reach your level, you don't want a bunch of losses, right?
So I always say my job is really risk analysis. So what I do is I usually look at whatever it is, and I say to people, I think you got a really good shot here, or, I don't think this is a winner. And, if you're going to play the long game, I think you want to tell people when they don't have a winner. It's just like being a lobbyist, You don't want to tell people, well, I can pass this. You want to be realistic about it. So we usually do some analysis. Now, I've had people where I get back and I say, look, I don't see how you're going to win. I'll file this for you. It's not frivolous that I'm violating my ethical rules or anything, but, I don't think you're going to win. And they say, oh, that's okay. there's other reasons we want to go do it, and if we lose, we lose. Some people say, well, let's not.
Is it hard to get up for that kind of lawsuit? I mean, my assumption is, when you get into this redistricting fight, you wake up before the alarm that morning, you're ready to go. Is it hard to keep your energy up on a case that you don't really think has a good shot?
Well, yeah, although, as soon as those words come out of my mouth that I've had cases where they don't really have a good shot. I mean, most of the stuff that I've had the privilege of being involved in is interesting enough that I think, well, there is a line here where I can get a couple of Supreme Court judges interested in this. Whether I'm going to get 4, I don't know. But, there's something here I can do. I mean, you look at, I'm digressing, but when we were talking about single subject and all that, Judge Fisher for a long time was saying that if you have multiple subjects bill, you got to throw the whole bill out. And the rest of the court was saying, no, we'll sever out the bad stuff. Well, now they've come all the way around on that. And in the most recent decisions, they seem to be saying, we'll throw out an entire bill if it contains multiple subjects. So, there are different levels of, well, I think you're going to lose, and maybe you're definitely going to lose at the trial court, but there's a chance the Supreme Court will think about this again in a different way. So you can get intellectually stimulated usually, and I have had cases where I'm like, there's no way I'm bringing this. It's not worth anybody's time or money. I'm not going to take your money, to go bring that lawsuit.
So a person gets your number, or Google's online and calls the office, and they sit down with you, and that's the analysis you walk them through. Yeah. And then when you dive in, what's that like? I guess it depends on the case, maybe? Well,
it kind of depends on case. You got to figure out where you're going to be. What court do you want to sue in? A lot of things we do they have to be in Cole County. You got to think through a little bit, what are the client's real goals? Some people need something accomplished quickly. Redistricting. It needs to be done fairly quickly in the world.
You could have a long
lawsuits.
lawsuit on this, but for Emmanuel Cleaver, you're really probably talking about 5-6 months.
Yeah, I think this is one where you want to do it a little more quickly.
Will a court understand that, though? I would think in this situation, a court would be, okay, we got to push this, come to a decision here.
So, our courts in Cole County in particular have always been just great about this. I mean, we've had all sorts of different judges through there, but I think there's a good tradition in Cole County of, hey, there are some things that we just need to make a decision and move it on to the next court. Yeah. A lot of that comes from the old Byron Kinder days. Their job's to call a ball and a strike, and if you want to go to booth review, that's fine. Yeah. But they're supposed to call them quickly, and I think in Cole County at least we do that.
Tell me about the 3 new Supreme Court judges.
Yeah,
you're in front of them more than anybody. Yeah. What do you think about Judge Ransom?
Well, I think Judge Ransom has shown a fair amount of independence so far, which I think is great. I think in reading her opinions, she seems to, be really doing well in terms of how she thinks through things.
I like an independent thinker in any walk of life.
Yeah, and she's gotten up to speed really fast, I think.
Hell of a bowler, too.
That's what I heard, hell of a bowler. I tried to use a bowling analogy up there one day and nobody laughed.
Not even she? She's got a good sense of humor.
I said somebody was trying to pick up a 17-10 split, and, I don't know.
She didn't even laugh at that?
Fell flat, so. But I think she's great. I think she's off to a good start. I've told a lot of people this privately, don't know that I've ever said it on, a worldwide broadcast like this, but Mike Parson did a hell of a job appointing judges. Yeah. He appointed some great judges.
Tell me about Judge Broniak.
So Judge Broniak, I think so far seems to be a conservative addition. She seems to align a little more with Judge Fisher than the rest of them. People ask me all the time about sort of the politics of all this. We've got 7 judges up there who are good judges on 90% of the things. They're all going to agree generally on what the law is. You got some things where, are very high profile where they don't agree. And she tends to I think a little bit more like Zell Fisher does.
Well, I think she could fulfill a role for the court that Judge Russell has fulfilled for so long, a real ambassador of the court and the court plan and all those things. I think Judge Broniak has that ability to be that ambassador at some point when Judge Russell moves on from the court. I think she has a real ability to be a great ambassador for the Missouri judiciary.
Oh, yeah. Well, a great human, right?
Yeah.
I mean, when you're with her, charismatic, good face for the court. Absolutely.
What about Judge Gooch?
So Judge Gooch, I've known Judge Gooch for a while. Of course, she comes from the Hush Blackwell firm, which is where our new attorney general is from. She is, unlike a lot of the judges we see on the Supreme Court, she has a long history of really litigating complex cases, a lot of commercial cases, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
That's the thing about our Supreme Court. I think it's great that they all bring sort of slightly different perspectives. Zell Fisher was an associate circuit judge.
He's the patron saint of all associate circuit judges.
Well,
right?
And I'll tell you what, associate circuit judge, that's real people with real problems.
Yeah.
He's
the only one that really went from the associate bench to the Supreme Court.
That's right. And so he's used to real people, having real things. We're not talking about some esoteric bullshit about whether something violates the Constitution. We're talking about, who's getting the kids this weekend and whether somebody needs a protective order so they don't get beaten up. I mean, that's real stuff that needs to be addressed. So he gets that a lot. Robin Ransom comes from a family law, kind of focus. You got Paul Wilson, who loves to think deep thoughts about the Missouri Constitution and how all that works.
Which he kind of came from places you think about that.
Yeah, but Paul was a government litigator, right? He never really did what Gooch did, which is commercial litigation representing businesses out there. Broniak comes from more of that prosecutor, sort of background. So they all kind of come from different places. Russell practiced in a small town. And then you got Judge Powell, who was in Jackson County and, spent a lot of time on the circuit bench dealing with, what I call regular trial disputes of all types. So we've got a great court that I think comes from different perspectives. And I think Gooch was a great pick because we didn't really have that in the current makeup of the court, somebody who had done all this business litigation. I think Judge Stith was probably the last one who really came from that, business lawyer, litigator bent.
Well, if we had a couple beers, I could sit here and do this all day. So thank you for your time. I got to give you a gift, buddy Corey Henry from Wayne County.
All right.
That's his union pin. Wanted me to give that to you. Thank you so much for your time. We appreciate everything. I can't tell you how interesting it is. Your perspective is so different than most people's because you've done so many different things, and now you're at the center of so many different issues. We're very grateful for the time you spent with us here.
Oh, happy to do it. It's fun.
Well, thank you all for watching. We may be back tomorrow. It kind of depends on Kelton, what he decides to line up for us. But if not, we will see you Sunday with the now former Attorney General, Andrew Bailey, on This Week in Missouri Politics.